Back in the building, old people. I'm talking about myself and technology. We've just had a bit of a glitch. I'm just waiting for Instagram's button to catch up again. And then we'll be picking up from Jack Benny's anti-macassar. And if you've just joined, you'll be thinking, what are they talking about? So just a minute. I'm just waiting. Yes, the button's responding.
Excellent.
So if you've just rejoined, this is me still talking to the music business colossus, which is John Altman. We've had a bit of a freeze and a glitch, but we're back in the Good Listening To show, Stories of Distinction and Genius. And this is a special Legacy Life Reflections recording where I'm featuring the lovely John Altman. So, John, are you all right?
Yes. I briefly froze again there, but I've come back.
Yes. So I think we're in, and you were just talking, and Dan, my podcast editor, will know exactly what to do. We're now picking up. You've just been talking about Jack Benny's anti-macassar.
Yes.
So just fill that back in. Just go back a step. So talk us through Jack Benny's anti-macassar.
Well, Jack Benny used to put black boot polish on his bald patch. I guess it was the days before, wigs or transplants or anything like that. And he would lean back against the, I guess younger people won't know what it is, but the antimacassar was a sort of a white linen thing that sat on the back of sofas that prevented Brill cream from getting on, and unfortunately didn't prevent black boot polish from never being able to be taken off. So my mother wasn't too happy. It was like, Jack Benny's coming round, hide the antimacassars.
So everyone, the world loved Jack Benny, but except your mum, who was always stressed about her antimacassar.
Yeah, well, we one evening my uncle brought Danny Kaye round, and after the Palladium, and they were playing records till 4 a.m. and making a racket. I don't know.
Do you know what? My childhood is steeped in Tubby the Tuba.
Yes,
one of the and the Little Fiddle was one of the ways that he would say the Little Fiddle, which was totally unique to him.
Well, they were. They were making a racket, till 4 a.m, being a bit boisterous, I guess.
Yes.
And the neighbour came up and knocked on the door, very irascible, and you've disturbed our sleep. How dare you? I need to work, etc., etc. And my mother said, "Oh, I'm really sorry. My brother brought Danny Kaye round last night." And I went, "Danny Kaye, and you didn't call us?"
And can you imagine the likes of trying to tell Frank Sinatra to keep the noise down? I mean, oi, Frankie, shut it! Trying to get some sleep here. Love that.
Well, my Frank Sinatra story, which is quite amusing, he obviously was at the London Palladium with my uncle conducting, and he said to my uncle, "Is your brother playing anywhere?" And he said, "Well, yeah, he's at the Café de Paris or Le Suivi or one of those nightclubs." He said, "Can we go and see him?" So they went, and of course there was a big hoo-ha when Frank Sinatra walked in, and oh, look, everybody, look. And Sinatra walked right up to the bandstand and said to my uncle, "Well, have I got enough experience for you yet?"
Oh, wow. How lovely.
Sid didn't have a clue what he was talking about. Obviously recognized him, but had no idea. But Sid had gone to New York in 1937 to lead a band, and he auditioned singers, and one of the singers he auditioned was Frank Sinatra.
Good grief.
Who he said, "Come back when you've had a bit more experience."
Well, he certainly did it his way. That was what a comeback.
I never forgot that, and that was the point of that evening, But he stayed very friendly with the family. I never really met him, but I knew Frank Jr.
Yes.
Who told me some interesting stories.
And just go back a step. Sid's second name was what? Sorry, because it wasn't Altman. Sid Phillips.
My mother was a Phillips, so Sid Phillips and Wolf Phillips were her brothers.
That's a lovely sort of riff on a segue into a Frank Sinatra story there. We're going to be peppering and texturing in music as we go through, because we've had a bit of a technical glitch. This sounds like a sort of good place to maybe texture in the first of the track. So have you got any instinct yet about what track we'd like to texture in?
I actually, yes, I would like to put in my band accompanying Harold Nicholas of the Nicholas Brothers, probably the greatest dancers of the last century. Everybody knows. if they don't know their names, they probably know the dance routine in Stormy Weather, where they run up the stairs and jump over each other, or when they run up the wall in the Glenn Miller film. And I did a film called Funny Bones, a wonderful movie, which starred Jerry Lewis, who bizarrely took a liking to me, which I don't think he did to many people. And he would crack all his jokes at me, and he would, little asides, very funny. We hung out quite a lot, which is bizarre. But there was a casting with a Las Vegas entertainer, and I was very friendly with Harold Nicholas. And I thought, well, that would be perfect for him because he was a Las Vegas entertainer. So I got him the part. The problem, well, it wasn't a problem, but he was aging quite a bit, although I'm probably older than he was now, but he came in to sing Beyond the Sea, which again was my idea, with my big band. And he couldn't remember any of the words. And the director was looking at me, thinking, how on earth are we going to do this? I said, don't worry, we'll write them all out on a card and he'll sing them, which he did brilliantly.
Yeah.
And that's the recording I like to play. To finish the story, when we filmed, he was playing the Master of Ceremonies at the nightclub.
Yeah.
And he had to introduce the actor Oliver Platt to come on and do a stand-up routine, the bombs. So the only problem was that Harold was about a foot shorter than Oliver Platt. And also Harold couldn't remember his lines. So Peter Chelsom, the director, very, very clever man, rigged up an earpiece and fed him all the lines. So he would say, please welcome, the one and only, Tommy Fawkes. And then Harold had to move in to adjust the microphone because he was a foot shorter. So Peter went, move into the mic, Harold. And Harold went, move into the mic, Harold. Oh, that's me. It was wonderful. It was a great moment. But I mean, the performance he does of Beyond the Sea is absolutely marvelous. And I enjoy nothing more than sort of recreating that Frank Sinatra, Nelson Riddle type sound, So that's an example of it where we took the shape of the Bobby Darin version of Beyond the Sea, but I spiced it up and rewrote the backing.
So tee up the song again that we're going to texture in.
It's Beyond the Sea by Harold Nicholas with my big band.
Boom. Gorgeous texturing in. And what year was that recorded?
That would be 1994.
Perfect first segue of music. We're still in the canopy of your tree, shaping what shaped you. This is lovely in any case, but anything else about shaping, things that have shaped you, John Altman?
Yes, again, going back to my early years, to the family, I guess I must have been about 3 years old. And my parents loved music, but they weren't particularly, I don't like to say they weren't musically aware, because they were. I mean, my mother played stride piano and had been friendly with Fats Waller and people like that before the war, and Coleman Hawkins. But we had a pile of 78s, which I still have. 78 RPM records.
Yeah.
And in those days, again, I'm going back to the early 50s, you didn't hear much music. Television sort of was a couple of hours in the evening, and then a sort of potter's wheel.
And a test card,
The light program maybe would have a dance band once a week, and that was it. And there was no access to, hearing music particularly. So I discovered the 78s and I started playing them at 3 years old. I don't remember my parents playing them, but I certainly did. And once I worked out the gramophone, how it worked, I never distinguished what I was listening to. So I could be listening to Count Basie or Duke Ellington, and then I'd be listening to How Much Is That Doggy in the Window, or, you know, Bill Haley and the Comets or something like that. And then Borodin's Second Symphony. And I never made any distinction. It's like, I like this, I like this, I like that, I like that. So basically my musical eclecticism was formed at that young age before I actually knew what I was listening to.
And by this time, I know you first learned a piano, but when did you pick up a saxophone? Because obviously that's the instrument.
I got the first saxophone at the age of 12.
Yeah.
And I'd already given up piano lessons at 11. I never took music O level. I've not had a formal arranging lesson, conducting lesson, saxophone lesson, nothing. Completely self-taught.
So the true maverickness of that, I mean, that's a total one of a kind.
Insane.
Yes.
It's insane. I mean, if I met the 20-year-old me, I like to play the saxophone. I never was an arranger. I never thought about, although I'd composed little piano pieces when I was 7, I never thought I'm going to compose. I certainly had never conducted an orchestra or thought I would.
Yes.
And
later on, sorry to interrupt you. Later on, I know we're going to get onto how you suddenly stumbled upon being the music arranger for Monty Python, because that was again about being in the right place at the right time and a sort of
all of it. Yeah. I mean, what would happen would be I would be playing saxophone with someone, and they would say, you know, can you write an arrangement? And I'd go, well, yeah, I guess so. And I would put something together, and the odds were that they liked it more than what they had, which is what happened with Hot Chocolate. They weren't 100% sold on the arrangements that they had on their records.
Yeah.
Because Mickey Most had a very, very good arranger, a jazz arranger.
Yeah.
And the charts were very jazzy. And they wanted to be like the Ohio Players or Kool and the Gang. You know, they wanted to be a funk band.
Yeah.
So I rewrote the arrangements to be funkier.
Yes.
And they loved them, you know, so boom, I'm an arranger. And that's how it continued, you know.
And the jazz through line, just saying yes to everything and just riffing and jazzing all your life is an incredible way to texture in the sort of hindsight of the career.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I was doing things that didn't seem unusual to me, but to me looking back, I can't imagine how I did them, because I started doing takedowns for the BBC. I should explain. A takedown is, or was, in the days when TV variety existed, mainly American artists would come over and they wouldn't bring any music, but they had to sing live on, say, the Two Ronnies or Seaside Special or the Marty Kane Show or something like that. So the record company or the BBC would send me a cassette of the song. No music, no top line, no sheet music, nothing. And I would listen to the cassette and I would write down what I heard on the cassette and then adapt it for, say, the Two Ronnies or Russell Harty or Parkinson or something like that.
Yeah. And
I got to work with a lot of people in that bizarre way, like Don Williams, the Stylistics, Telly Savalas, who I wound up as his musical director and conductor. And I didn't see anything unusual in this, but obviously it's something that not many people could do. To actually listen to a cassette and say, oh yeah, the bass is doing this. And this is without slowing it down and without a computer program that tells you what's going on or being able to hear it back.
And was your reputation about just how quickly you could turn that around? Is that where it came from?
I'd get a day to do it, you know. Oh, they arrive on Thursday. Could you have it ready? And I never said no, I can't. You know, it's too quick.
It's the gift of jazz, just saying yes and riffing and just improvising.
Absolutely, but
Yes.
I don't know how I discovered that I could do it. That's the bizarre thing. I mean, obviously the first time I got asked to do it, I did it, and that generated more. But why the first time I was able to do it rather than throw my hands up and go, look, I haven't got a clue what's going on. I could hear what was going on, and that was my trick.
And it's such an idiosyncratic path. Have you tried to prescribe your career trajectory to someone in your wake to say, can I do what you do? You've just ended up in the right place at the right time with the right ears.
I've told people when I do masterclasses and go to colleges, and they're people who are studying and want to be film composers, for example, how do I do it? And I said, well, you've got to be like me. You've got to join the top pop group in the country and then take down stuff off records, then go and arrange, you know, have some hit records and go and work for another composer on a film, and he can't cut the mustard, and they ask you to do it, and you say, okay, agree with the guy who hired me in the first place, and off I go. And that's been the story of how I did it.
Which, by the way, is why I just spontaneously described you as a colossus of the music industry when I'd looked at Wikipedia, because Monty Python was enough of a hook to, gosh, what a legend. And then the legends just kept on giving ever since then. So anyway, this is amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Right place at the right time. You know, I can't claim, I mean, there were people just as good as me who were doing stuff. Absolutely. But I just happened to be there or thereabouts, you know, and I came off the road. I toured with Van Morrison in '79.
Yeah.
And I was really starting to get a lot of commercials and TV work and TV drama. And I just went, well, look, that's it. I'm not going to do that anymore, tour around.
Yeah.
I didn't, you know, I mean, that was the end of my touring. I did small tours with like Alison Moyet or Bjork or...
Yes.
You know, when
and also there's the Ala Jones Walking in the Air, which is again so eclectic and different.
Yeah, well, that came about in the funny way because we were doing a commercial for Toys R Us. Gosh, dates me.
We being what, you and Ala? Who's the we that were doing the?
Well, my company. I was signed to Jeff Wayne, and I would write commercials for him.
Yeah.
So I got approached to do. Walking in the Air, which Howard Blake had written for The Snowman. But Howard's contract prescribed him from doing any other work with it, which is weird, you know, but that was what it was. He wasn't allowed to do something else on TV. So it got offered to me, and I put it together, and I'd never met Ali. And they sent him along to the studio. And he couldn't. I guess he was really nervous. We decided to make a record at the same time, which was a very sensible move.
Yeah.
But he couldn't remember how it went. So I think it was the first time he'd been in a proper studio, you know. So I wound up standing next to him, singing in falsetto, line by line. And then he sang it, and then I did the next line, and then he sang it. And I'm not telling tales out of school, because if you read his autobiography, that's in there.
Yes. Would that be a segue? I mean, you don't have to make that the piece of music, but is that a second piece of music that's worthy of this moment, or not really?
It could be. I mean, I've not done anything I'm not, you know, 100% proud of. But I mean, sorry.
I'm just glad it wasn't me. Is that Ali Jones going, no, you didn't?
Yes. I'll just message them not to keep trying me.
Yes.
I'm sure you can cut this out.
Not at all. And was it someone glamorous?
It was a friend of mine, a film producer, who's going to... I don't quite know what they want, but I spoke to them yesterday.
And Dan, my podcast editor, will know that this is also to be cut out, this bit as well.
Yes.
I didn't want to prescribe the piece of music, so it's up to you. We can either do Ella Jones at this point, or that.
No,
I
I was
wasn't
saying
pushing
we can do. I mean, it just depends. I mean, there's so many things, you know, so many different aspects to cover. I mean, there's like, you know, there's George Michael, there's Python, there's Rod Stewart, there's Tina Turner. You know, it's really what you want to do.
Yes, and I'm feeling that Ella Jones isn't quite of the caliber now of the ones you've just mentioned.
Well, it's great. You know, that's the thing. I mean, if we had like 20 records,
Yes,
we'd probably put it in. You know, as I say, I'm not ashamed of it. I think it's great, and every Christmas it's back again.
because we can think of you singing falsetto next to him as you guide him through the track. So we're still in the shaking of your tree.
Yeah.
So we're getting there. So any other shapeages you'd like to talk about before we talk about 3 things that inspire you?
Well, there are so many people who gave me who believed in me when I didn't. Going right back to Errol Brown of Hot Chocolate, who basically, you know, encouraged me. What happened was I joined the band, and our first gig was at Salford University, and the road manager had hired a bus, and the bus broke down in the car park.
So the wheels on the bus were not going round and round.
The bus were not going round. It was like a scene from Hard Day's Night, you know.
Yeah.
Screaming kids were rocking the bus side to side. And Errol was like, right, you know, he thumped the seat and said, right, from now on we travel in our own. I think if I did text and say I'm on a Zoom, but let me just quickly, if you can cut all this out, I'll just quickly.
Yes, if you're watching live, this is real life happening right here. We're about to watch John Altman telling somebody to bugger off, probably.
Hello. I don't know what's happening. Sorry.
He's happy to interrupt you, but he's not happy to be interrupted himself.
No,
so Dan, podcast editor, you'll know what to do.
I'm sorry about this.
Not at all.
Hi, it's only me. I'm on a live broadcast, and my computer keeps ringing. Yeah, it's on Instagram, and it will be streamed. So I better get on. I'll call you when I'm done. Okay, bye.
It'd be quite funny if it's it's Van Morrison on the phone or something like that. But anyway.
Well, I've done that in the past. I was in a meeting on a commercial, and Sacha Distel rang me.
As you do.
Paris, as you do.
Yeah.
And I was going, yes, Sacha, no, Sacha, no, yeah. And everyone was like, oh, but it was Sacha Distel. And I said, yep.
Well, there aren't many Sachas, are there, really?
Well, it could have been Baron. No, it's too early for
Sacha Baron Cohen. I know where you were going there. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's a mate of mine as well. So.
Of course.
Oh,
well. May I ask, did you get on well with Van Morrison as well? Because he's famous for getting quite sort of brutal with musicians. I
got on fantastically. I mean, when I'd met him in 1974, and we sort of got very friendly, and we jammed together occasionally. We didn't play together in public till 77. We did a TV show.
Yeah.
And then in late 78, he called me and said, I'm going to go on the road. Will you be the arranger and, you know, put the horn section together? And what he said to me was, do whatever you like, you know, just tell me when to come in. So I sort of spruced up what was going on, you know. But he was also great, very encouraging. As I said, Errol Brown as well.
Yeah.
We travelled in his Cadillac, in the green Cadillac, to all the gigs. So we talked a lot, and he was very, very encouraging. And even after I left and I was successful in movies, he his daughter was at music college, and he said, "Oh, I keep instancing you, you know, as the example of what you should become." And
Oh, how
very,
lovely.
very nice.
Well, it's a marvelous night for a moon dance. All of that, lovely. Splendid. So we could be on to three things. Well, you may be doing the inspirations anyway now, but three things that inspire you. So far we've had four things that have shaped you, and then
Yeah.
three things that inspire you now.
Things that inspire me are great music, great cricketers, and I guess the third one. Let me think. I mean, I think great movies, because bizarrely, I mean, I always loved film before I even got involved in it.
Yeah.
But as film rather than as a musician, you know,
Yeah.
when I came back to London to do a PhD, which I never finished,
You're too busy working.
so that's all right.
Say that again. Sorry.
I got an honorary doctorate, so
Yes.
you know, thank you. No work needed. But I took a job. Well, it wasn't really a job. It was a part-time thing of putting together stuff for the BFI. So I put together seasons of British musicals of the 30s, and I was going to write a book about it all. But my biggest achievement, I think, claim to fame achievement, was I was watching some hideously bad British musicals from the 30s all day in a little screening theatre in Great Russell Street that the BFI had. I don't know if they've still got it, but I packed up to go, and the projectionist and his assistant were getting really busy, like, you know, bringing in sandwiches, and I casually said, "Oh, what's going on here?" Later, said, "We can't tell you." So that immediately, you know, hello.
Hello. Yes.
I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "No, because it can't get out, but stick around and you'll see." And I said, "Look, I've had a day of it. You know, I'm going home. I've had enough." And he said, "Look, I promise you,
Stick around.
It will take you a while to stick around." So I stuck around. What it was Charlie Chaplin and his whole family watching Limelight that hadn't been screened for 30 years, plus Claire Bloom and Robert Vaughan and a couple of others, and I'm lurking at the back.
As a new sort of part-time projectionist.
Part-time projectionist. I mean, Chaplin, for example, was doing a running commentary through the film. So when Buster Keaton comes on with him, all he was saying, and there was a story at the time that I read in books that, you know, he cut Keaton's scene to ribbons and he hated it, and, you know, big ego. All he was saying was, "Watch Buster. Watch what Buster does. Watch Buster. Watch." Totally different. Of course, you know, no cameras, no anything. My friend got his autograph. I shook his hand, but I didn't ask for an autograph, which I should have done. But I didn't have anything with me, you know. It was like, "Will you sign this receipt or something?" I don't know.
The sort of jazz riff of your life is really extraordinary. You've described so many spontaneous instances of just jazz riffing.
But this is it. This is what my life has been. You know, being in a certain place and suddenly found that I'm, I don't know, writing the James Bond music, or winning a BAFTA or winning an Emmy. You know, it's like, oh, okay, thank you. You know,
thanks very much.
Thanks very much. That's how it's done, is it?
Wow. And again, you can't prescribe it because you've just ended up there. Yes.
Well, I mean, the Hear My Song was basically the first film that I scored and got credit for.
Yeah.
And I won the Asquith Award. So I thought, well, this is easy. You just do a film and you get an award. You know? I don't get known.
Gosh. Any more inspirations, or are we now on to the two monsters of distraction, your two squirrels?
Well, the inspirations, I mean, I think you've, you know, hit the nail on the head with personalities and meeting and interacting with them, you know. And they've all been inspirational for me, you know, whether it's been Michael Palin, as we said, or Amy Winehouse, or Bob Marley, or Orson Welles, or, you know, Mel Torme, people I've admired and then I got to work with.
Yes.
Or I've got to work with and then discovered you know, wow, you know, I did that. Nick Drake, you know, he's become a legend. I mean, I played with him in the front room, John Martin's flat, many times. Who knew? You sort of know that, and it's continued to today. I mean, Cynthia Erivo was our backing vocalist for years.
And I picture you always walking around with a saxophone case. Is that the case or not?
Pretty near the mark, yes.
Gosh, how extraordinary. So a wandering minstrel who just keeps wandering into all the right places at the right time in the right place in history.
Yeah, I mean,
they call you a wandering minstrel.
Well, you see, even going back to late 60s, early 70s, I would roll up at gigs with my saxophone, and I wasn't booked or anything, but I would say, oh, you know, can I play? I'm a friend of so-and-so, or I know so-and-so. And they always say yes. And in those days, there were no minders or managers or backstage dressing rooms. The band, whoever they might be, Fleetwood Mac or whatever,
Gosh,
would be at the bar. You know, so you go up to them and say, oh, you know, I'm a friend of so-and-so. Can I play? Oh, yeah, great, you know. And if you played one song and you were terrible, they'd say, thank you very much, clear off. And if they like you, they'd say, oh, stay for the whole evening and come next Sunday. And
I can't imagine many people have told you to clear off.
Nobody actually ever has.
No, I love that.
I mean, there must be somebody who's told me to disappear. I can't.
Sure, do one. You know, I can't imagine that happening. No. Okay, now then, I believe we could be on to, this is inspired by the film Up, where the dog goes, oh, squirrels. So what never fails to be monsters of distraction, sometimes called shiny object syndrome, what never fails to distract you, whatever else is going on in your very eclectic life?
First of all, hearing music anywhere, any music. Having said it early on that, you know, when I was a kid, I never heard music. I can't unhear music now. You know, and that means walking into a lift or a supermarket.
Are you including lift music? I love that. That's still music.
I hear it. I mean, I've heard my own music played in the lift. You know? And there was a wonderful routine. I think it might have been Jackie Mason did a lovely routine about lift music. You know, and you know, you've got music, you've got lovely lighting. I put a table in there. I invited my girlfriend. We had a dinner. You know, but it's true. You know, what is the point of music in a lift? You know, or the bane of my life is music on hold. You know, because most of it is either appalling. But my last doctor's surgery had some wonderful jazz piano, but you only got like the first 32 bars over and over again. And I was thinking, for God's sake, you know, resolve this.
Yes. That's your idea of purgatory, I don't doubt. Just the same 32 bars repeated.
I know, it's terrible. But I'm you know, I still love good books. I love good music. I'm always distracted by, you know, 1940s film noir or it's straight away, you know. Wow, you know, I've got to watch that.
Love that. And now, a quirky or unusual fact about you, John Altman. You've been giving these anyway, but a quirky or unusual fact about you we couldn't possibly know about you until you tell us.
Gosh, that's a tricky one. What can I think of? There are a few. I'm trying to think of something bizarre. Let me think. Give me a second. I shall.
You can come back to Jack Benny's antimacassars if you like. No one's ever said that before. But anyway, sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No. Oh, well, something not many people would know was that my first stage appearance was at the age of 3. My mother always insisted it was with Judy Garland, but I don't think it was. The story is that I was backstage at the Palladium. My uncle was conducting for Judy Garland. I ran out on stage and said, "It's okay, Uncle, you have a rest. I'll conduct the orchestra." To much hilarity and mirth.
Love that.
Unfortunately, looking at the photos, Judy Garland is on stage and my uncle's in the pit with a light on him. But looking at the pictures of Betty Hutton, she is on stage with the band. And I think it was Betty Hutton, and the dates match. So my first stage appearance was with Betty Hutton at the London Palladium.
That's a cool, quirky fact right there. Okay, we have shaken your tree, John Altman. Hurrah, in the structure. We've got the clearing and the tree so far. Now we're going to stay in the clearing, which is in Epping Forest.
Epping Forest.
Just reminding ourselves before our technical glitch. And now we're staying in the clearing, moving away from the tree. We're going to talk about alchemy and gold now. When you're at purpose and in flow, what are you absolutely happiest doing and what you're here to reveal to the world?
I'm incredibly happy playing music with my big band. I'm incredibly happy writing music, particularly that eureka moment when I find the voice, for example, of a movie that I'm working on, and then everyone agrees that that's correct. You know, that's something that you also have to go through with film students and say, look, you know, it's a collaborative thing. You have to be prepared for people to say, could you change that? So, I mean, I used to love, I mean, I still do, you know, the idea that I can go somewhere and pull out the saxophone and play.
Yes.
And it could be with people I've never met in my life in a country where I don't actually speak the same language as the people I'm playing with. And that still thrills me.
Yes. Music just transgressing all language barriers. Absolutely.
Totally, yeah.
Reversing. Yes. Lovely answer. And now I'm going to award you with a cake, John Altman. So do you like cake, first of all?
I do, yes.
I do. And what cake would you like?
I'll have a sponge cake, I think.
I like sponge cake.
Yeah,
There's a joke when someone's rammed in an elevator. I don't know if you've seen that. I like sponge cake. But anyway, I like sponge cake.
I would say a chocolate cake, but that's probably too rich.
Okay, well, you can have both if you like. Have a sponge cake and a chocolate
No, it's too much.
Sponge. Okay, sponge cake.
Yeah.
We're talking Victoria sponge, is that right?
Victorian sponge, yeah.
I've got a cunning plan to be able to send people the cake of choice as one of the developments of what we're doing. So it'll be my pleasure to furnish you, not in your face, splotch, a la slapstick, but a sponge cake. Now you get to put a cherry on the cake with stuff like, what's a favorite inspirational quote that's always given you succor and pulled you towards your future, John Altman?
Hey, I would be highly amusing or highly unamusing. And I would say I'm going to speak classical Greek. And I'm going to say Dio kai philosophoteron kai spoudateron piesis historias estin.
Of course you are.
Which you would probably agree with, I think.
Definitely. I thought 4 times that much, actually. But anyway, what's the translation?
Well, the translation is poetry is something far deeper and more philosophic than history.
And just to reincorporate, give us the Greek again. That was lovely.
Dio kai philosophoteron kai spoudateron piesis historians estin.
In all my circa 250 episodes, no one has ever given me a Greek quote.
No, I did classical Greek and Latin at school. And that's the only thing I remember of both.
Very good. It's a perfectly good thing to remember.
It's much handier than surrounding the camp by nightfall, which most of the stuff was, you know.
Yes.
Doesn't get you very far in Athens these days.
No. And now, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given, John?
Let me think. Well, I had some advice from. It's not quite advice, but I wrote a commercial for. I think it was Kraft cheese slices. And the director said to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but the music seems to start at the beginning, go through the whole commercial very nicely until the end when it stops. And I stood there and said, do you know, that's the way I try to write music.
Which resonates so beautifully with the Monty Python thing of all brontosauruses are thin at one end, very much fatter in the middle, and then very thin again at the other end.
That's true.
And was that very helpful, that advice? Not mine about brontosauruses, but his advice about the nature of your music.
Well, it was, because I always tried to write music that started at the beginning and went through very nicely till the end when it stopped. That's my mantra, really.
Yes, before the castanet solo at the end. How fantastic.
Oh, castanets. Oh, no, that's a good one. I'm doing a commercial for Help the Aged. And it's Dame Thora Hird. And the music is Morning Has Broken with a flute and harp and strings. Lovely. I get to the studio an hour early and the client is there looking very, very worried. Very worried. And I'm looking at him, I say, good morning, and he sort of shrugs. And I said, is something wrong? You know, thinking, well, it can't be anything to do with the track because there's no one here. And he said, no, you know what you're doing. And I thought, okay, there's something wrong. And I said, what's troubling you? He said, well, no, everything's great, except how loud are you going to have the castanets? You know what we're doing? I said, yeah, Morning Is Broken, flute, harp, strings, Thora Hird. And I said, there are no castanets. He went, oh, okay. And at that moment, the engineer said to the tape op, try microphone number 3, please. And he went, and the guy went, those castanets.
And take the volume up, whack up the volume on the castanets.
Wonderful.
That's just brilliant. And how random I said castanets and that fired that memory. You're jazz riffing again. Go you.
That's my castanet memory, I'm afraid.
With the gift of hindsight, what notes, help, or advice might you proffer to a young version of John Altman?
I would actually say just do what you did, which is say yes to everything. Don't be daunted, and you can do it. You know, if you want to wind up conducting the Royal Philharmonic or the London Symphony Orchestra, there's nothing to stop you. The fact that you've never done it in your life will stop you if you think about it. But if you're confident that you can pull an entire symphony orchestra along by waving your arms, go for it.
And indeed, you've done that many times. You are a regular guest conductor for the Royal Philharmonic.
Fantastic. I was, bizarrely. I did several films and albums with them.
We're ramping up to Shakespeare in a moment to talk about legacy and how you'd most like to be remembered. But just before we get there, this is the pass the golden baton moment, please. So now you've experienced this from within, the technical glitches notwithstanding, who would you most like to pass the golden baton along to who might appreciate being given a damn good listening to in this way?
I would say my friend Richard Niles, who does what I do, and has a wonderful sense of humour, and comes from an incredible background as well, because his stepfather was Jesse Lasky Jr., the screenwriter. His father was Bing Crosby's guitarist. And he is a great arranger and very witty guy who's now living in America. He arranged Slave to the Rhythm for Grace Jones. He arranged I Lost My Heart to a Starship Trooper. He discovered Sarah Brightman. He arranged all the Pet Shop Boys hits. He did, many, like me, many records. And he's a funny guy, very funny guy.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to furnish me with a warm introduction to Richard Niles. Thank you.
I will
And now, Shakespeare. This is a Legacy Life Reflections episode. How, when all is said and done, inspired by all the world's prestige and all the bit of Billy players, the 7 Ages of Man speech, John Altman, how, when all is said and done, would you most like to be remembered?
Well, I had dinner a couple of weeks ago with an old friend, Leo Sayer, who was in London. And he said, I was with your old boss the other night talking about you. And my old boss, of course, being our friend Sir Van Morrison. And I thought, I hate to think what he was saying. So I said to him, what did he say? And he said, John Altman, terrific saxophone player. Oh. I think that's nice.
I love that. It's just the essence of you. Love it.
I mean, and I got wonderful quotes for my book when I wrote my book from Quincy Jones and Hans Zimmer, Jeff Goldblum, Joss Stone, John Batiste, Jim Carter, and the Pythons, all saying nice things. So
yes,
I think that, I must have done something right along the way.
And we haven't really gone there with the Pythons yet, but just tell me a little bit about that, the story behind the story of the Pythons and how you ended up writing all the music for Monty Python. Sorry, arranging all the music.
Yeah, I arranged a lot of the music, not all of it. There were a few of us who were working on it. But I went to a gig at the Marquee. My closest friend was a guitarist, a genius called Ollie Housel. And he was playing with a band called Tempest, which was John Heisman, the drummer. And I went to the Marquee, and they were quite loud, as a lot of the bands were in those days. So I made my way back to the bar at the back, and there was Neil Innes, and Neil and I started talking, and Mike McCartney, Paul's brother, and John Gorman.
I'm going to be interviewing Mike McCartney at Altman Animation in a couple of weeks.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah, no, he's a lovely guy. And I haven't seen him for years and years. I bumped into him at Zoot Money's funeral, funnily enough. But I was at the bar at the Marquee, excuse me, and Neil and I started talking. And we'd vaguely known each other in the past. And Ollie came over and said, oh, we're doing a session for Monty Python tomorrow. Do you want to come and play? And I idolized them. And of course, in those days, I'm talking 1973. If you were lucky, you saw a repeat of the show. There were no VHSs, no videos. So they made records, and the records sold. So I went down to the Workhouse Studios, and they were making the album Matching Tie and Handkerchief. And I took my saxophone, and they said, well, we don't need saxophone, but why don't you do some hand claps and vocals? Which I did, stupid. I can still hear it on the record, but that introduced me into the circle. So then Neil called me and said, would I arrange something for him? From that, I just somehow became a regular part of their circle of contacts.
Yes. So
at one point, I was doing simultaneously the Innes Book of Records, 3 series, Secret Policeman's Ball, both live shows, the Ruttles, obviously the Beatles spoof, and Life of Brian, all at the same time.
And the Life of Brian segue is so beautiful because before we spoke, you said you'd let me play us out with Always Look on the Bright Side of Life that you arranged with Eric Idle.
Yeah.
Also, as I know, when I first got going with this podcast about sort of 5 years ago, at the top of the tree on that first day was, the day I can speak to Michael Palin, we'll all know I've made it. So it's wonderful and perfect that we can play out and Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. If I may, I'm just going to show the audience a couple of QR codes. If you'd like to connect with John Altman on LinkedIn, here's a QR code there. Where can we find out all about you on the internet while I'm showing those that are watching your QR codes, John? So where can we find out all about John Altman on the old interweb?
Well, the two best places, I think, are, and the Wikipedia is actually accurate. I didn't write it, but it's pretty good. And also, there's a page about my autobiography. It's called Hidden Man, which is published by Equinox Books.
Yep.
And there's a whole page about the book with all the quotes from Quincy Jones and Hans Zimmer and all those people.
And we've not spoken about Quincy Jones either, but I know that in the picture that I'm now showing, the picture you sent me when I started to research you was, Absolutely. Oh, good grief, look who that is. It's John Altman with Quincy Jones, who very sadly died very recently, I know.
Yeah, my hero, yeah.
Yes.
And he was fantastic with me, you know. I mean, I couldn't believe that when we did the Michael Caine gala, I arranged Get a Bloomin' Move On, the song from The Italian Job, for him to sing and me to sing with the London Symphony Orchestra. How can you write that, you know?
Well, how can you write what you've described as being your life trajectory, actually? Because it's just been sort of a jazz riff on steroids.
Yeah. Right place, right time.
Yes.
And Quincy's always been very supportive of my work and everything, you know, which is wonderful.
And as I put here, for those that can't see because you're just listening, this is a QR code to John Altman's Wikipedia page, and I've said prepare to be blown away, which indeed I was. I described it at the beginning as being a bit of a colossus. You're a legend within a legend who's also a legend who's actually quite legendary. So that was really good. As this has been your moment in the sunshine in the Good Listening To show, John Altman, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, it's a pleasure being here and talking about this. You know, I sort of, when I wrote the book, it hit me how many things I've done, because most of my life has just been doing it, you know, so you don't really think about, oh, I did that. Oh, I did that as well. Oh, yeah, I was there. I did that. I mean, the thing about writing all the commercials I wrote, not that I dismissed them, but a couple of weeks ago, somebody said to me, you know, oh, so which sort of earworm commercials did you write? And I said, well, I wasn't really a jingle composer. I tended to write cinematic music for people like Ridley Scott when they did commercials. But I did do a couple of things that people might know. And I instanced B&Q that ran for years. They immediately sang it to me. And then I mentioned Sheila's Wheels that I wrote, and they immediately sang that to me.
Wow.
And then I was at the BAFTAs a few years ago, and I bumped into Julie Walters, and I said to her, you won't remember, but I wrote a little song for you for Cusson's Imperial Leather Soap. And she immediately sang the whole thing, words and music. And it must have been 30 years after I did it. And I said, how on earth do you remember that? You know, how can you remember it?
So you are an earworm, John Altman. You are
She said to me, that's the only song anybody ever wrote for me in my life. And I said, well, I'm sorry, it's such an awful song, you know.
Lovely.
I guess it did what it was supposed to do. You know, it sold Cusson's Imperial Leather. Yes. Where are they now?
Yes, in fact, I have done some work for Cousins where I think of Imperial Leather being posh soap, because it was posh soap when I grew up in Uganda. Absolutely. And very bizarrely, when I grew up in Uganda, I was best friends with Adrian Edmondson's two younger brothers, because his family were expats in Uganda as well.
I hadn't seen him for years, but I saw him at the Neil Innes memorial concert that we did.
And I'm interviewing Mac McCartney at Ardman as part of the Slapstick Festival, which of course, where Neil Innes was given great honour and praise by getting the sort of Legend Award as well.
Fantastic.
Brilliant. John, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. A real pleasure. Thank you very much. And thank you very much indeed for listening and watching too. Thank you also, just to position why I've called it a Legacy Life Reflections one. This is I've recently bought the domain also, Legacy Life Reflections, which is in order to, wrap an episode with me offering to be the presenter for somebody near, dear or close to you to record their story for posterity. And that's my main cut and thrust for this year. So that was me telling the audience this as well. But John Altman, thank you so much. We're now going to play out with always look on the bright side of life, and just tell us, that's what you arranged, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, briefly, the story was that I was at script meetings for Life of Brian. God knows why, but I was. And they had no ending for the film. They just didn't know what to do. You know, well, he's going to escape. They're going to rescue him. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. So Eric and Terry Jones went away and wrote songs. And being a group of, they were thrown together as a group of writers. They weren't a team, really. Mm. It was, oh, I don't like that. Oh, I'm not sure about that. Oh, I don't know, So Eric wrote the song and he played it to them. It was just guitar and voice. And it was lukewarm, I'd say. So he called me and said, find out how much they need. So I rang Terry Jones and said, how much do you need? He said, about 20 seconds. I rang Eric back and said, he said 20 seconds. Eric, unprintable response. He said, let's do the whole thing. So we did the whole thing. And they loved it. And they could see that it was going to work. And then Eric did the voice in Tunisia. He decided Mr. Cheeky was the right voice, because originally it was going to be all of them singing it. Yeah. And he overdubbed that, and all the crew was singing it. So he knew he was onto something.
Another earworm, absolutely.
And there we went. And it became what it became, which I wish I'd known. I whistled on the original and conducted it, and with Fred Tomlinson singers, but I did another session that afternoon, and I have no idea what. In my diary, it just says on to Air Studios, but I don't know what. Why did I? Why didn't I luxuriate in the sort of knowledge that this was going to be 50 years later, the highlight of everyone's life?
It's so iconic. Life of Brian was just so formative for me as a comedy film. I would have been.
Still stands up, doesn't it? I watched it again quite recently.
Yeah. And always look on the bright side of life is just perfect, and a perfect ending to this episode.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for watching and listening, and thank you so much, John Altman, for being my very, very special guest.
My pleasure.
And I'll end the stream there. Thank you for listening. I've been Chris Grimes. If you want to be in the show too, get in touch. And the website for the show is thegoodlisteningtoshow.com. Thank you very much indeed, John